Our next tasks or set of tasks involve doing some updates for views. And we are going to be updating the invoice date using the VI view. And so I'm going to go ahead and add task number 2 here. And so what we need to do is enter this update followed by the name of the view we are going to use to do the update. We're going to set the invoice date equal to the current date. Now we need to put in the where clause or it's going to update all of the invoice dates, which would be bad. So we only want to update vendor names that are IBM. Okay, and that is what the boss is asking us to do because the date that is currently in the system is wrong. And our VI view is in the AP database. Okay, and so once I selected the database and told it to go, all of the little squiggles went away, and now I should be able to execute this. And there were 2 rows that had vendor of IBM that ended up having the date changed. And let's go ahead and move our closing comment down. For our next scenario, our boss would like us to create a new vendor payment view. It should include the vendor name, invoice number, invoice date, payment date, invoice total, credit total, and payment total from both the invoice and vendors tables. And we only want to see rows that have a balance greater than 0. So I'm going to pause this while I key this in. And I'm going to be using the AP database. The new view is being called vendor payment. And the select that we are saving in that view is got vendor name, invoice number, basically all of the columns the boss specified. And then they are coming from invoices. Most of them come from invoices. Vendor name is coming from vendors, so we do need to do a join. So we're joining invoices with vendors, and the column that the 2 have in common is vendor ID. So we want invoices.vendor ID equal to vendors.vendor ID. And we only want to see the rows where the invoice total minus the payment total minus the credit total, which is the balance, where the balance is greater than 0. Okay, and then once we've created this view, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the rows that are in it. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this. So what we're seeing is the select from vendor payment. And we're going to go ahead and move our closing comment down. And let's save our changes. Now, the boss is noticing that we have a little problem in the payment date column. We actually want a date instead of null. So for all of the invoices, we can actually use the current date except for Malloy lithographing. They have a specific invoice number that we need to set a little different date for. So we're going to end up doing 2 different updates. We're going to first update everything to a payment date of the current date. And then we're going to do a separate update for Malloy lithographing. So we're using AP. We're going to update the data using our views. So we're going to do update vendor payment. And first we're going to start by setting the payment date to the current date. And we want to do this for all of the rows. So we are not going to do any kind of where clause here. We are doing a mass change. And then we'll do go here. And that's our first little update. And then we're going to do another one. And for this one, we're going to set the payment total equal to $19,351.18 and the payment date equal to 2020-06-01. And now we do need a where clause because we only want to change the vendor name of Malloy Lithographing Inc. and a very specific invoice number. Okay, so that is our second update. And we're going to go ahead and execute. So the first update modified 15 rows because that did everything. And for the second one, only one row was updated. And let's go ahead and move our closing comment down. And now let's take a look at what we have in vendor payment. And if we look, payment date is the current date. The only exception is Malloy Lithographing, which has a little different date because we did that one separately. And just so you realize that it is actually changing the data that is in the invoice table, I'm going to move the closing comment down. We can do okay, and so if we kind of go down here and look, you'll see that all of these have the current date. Quite a few of them do. Those are the ones that were changed from the view. Okay, so when you use a view to update data, you're actually updating the data in the original table. Just wanted to show you that. And our next little scenario here. The boss wants us to add a row to the vendor's Southwest. Well, actually, we're going to be adding the row into our vendor table using our vendor Southwest view. And so we're going to add a vendor, cookies, candies. And in order for this to work, we have to make sure we actually use or fill in the default terms ID and the default account number because those are foreign keys. So they have to have valid values in them in order for us to add the row. So we're going to use AP. We got to do go here, insert into. Now, even though we're inserting into the view, again, it's going to be updating the actual table. And if you can't remember what the columns are called in your view, remember that you can see the views and you can see what you called the columns. And if a column is not null, you have to fill it in. All right, so this is what we're inserting, okay, these columns. And here are our values that we are adding. And so another thing that you need to be aware of when you're doing this is that you need to make sure you're using the right data type. So vendor name is character, vendor city is character, vendor state is character. But we get into zip code and terms ID and account number, and you can tell that those are numeric, they're integer. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And where this was actually added was our vendors table. And we used the view to add the data, but the data actually went into the vendor table. So just to show you that, let's see, vendor name equals, okay, there is the row that we just added, and it was added to vendors, even though we inserted through the view. And for our final updating task here, the boss wants us to remove the IRS from our vendors list in the Southwest. So we are going to be using our Southwest view to actually delete a vendor. So what we're going to do first is just run a little select. So let's run that. Okay, so it's there. Now we're going to add to that a delete. And this is the one we want to delete. So I'm going to copy it. Okay, so it's going to display it and then it's going to delete it. Okay, so it's displaying it. How do we know it got deleted? We go into messages, and so one row affected is the display, one row affected then is the delete. And let's go ahead and move our closing comment down.